so much for tuning into the trade setup right here on BloombergQuint Live. Without much ado, let me first get in our guest, Peter Maguire, to talk about the big news that happened post Friday. We were talking about it all of last week, and Peter joins in to try and decipher what it means for us out here as Indian investors or emerging market investors. Peter, great having you. Good morning or good afternoon to you out there in Australia. What did you make of Jerome Powell's announcements or conversation? Did it come on expected lines, or did something surprise you?
Good morning, Niraj. No, I don't believe that anything as far as a surprise. I feel as though in some ways it was a little underwhelming. The reality of the matter is the two key frames that need to be considered. One was the inflation, their target of 2%. They feel as though that they've got that pretty much under control. And the next, of course, is employment. We've got those non-farm payrolls coming out this Friday, and we're suggesting it could be around about a 760,000 handle. So that's relatively okay. So as far as tapering, Niraj, probably later in the year, and it's a lead up to that. But of course, anything can be derailed with the current COVID crisis across the US and globally.
Yeah, Peter, just a couple of questions on the taper bit. Once I repeat one. What would this is the Fed successful enough, you reckon, in preparing the markets for the eventual move? Because typically when you talk about a move too often, it tends to become a non-event when it actually does happen. You think that is kind of successfully happened?
Well, that could be well the case. I mean, it's a little bit like cry wolf. We've been talking about this for the best part of 6 to 12 months because it's just been an ongoing. When will they actually pull taper? The 120 billion a month. Everyone understands that it's still a game on, and it's still very much the current status quo. So yes, it could be. I'm not suggesting you're going to see any dramatic I suppose considerations from the market, though the equity markets have certainly been bid up strongly. So that momentum may continue over the next matter of months, quite simply with but nothing changing on a global horizon.
Okay. Peter, what would it mean for an emerging market investor? Typically, the belief was that, at least when the taper happened earlier, it led to the scare that the money that was sloshing around will now start going down for private deals as well as for public markets. Do you think it could be as severe this time around, or because it will be a cushioned shock, it won't be materially evident for emerging market investors?
Well, I think as well, also the other side, of course, is that the appetite for emerging markets, I don't necessarily think is going away. Very, very strong appetite across the likes of Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and naturally India. So that I think from a global microscopic view, the upside is just so strong this decade. And then I think dollars naturally find a home, Niraj, where there's it outstrips other markets that are possibly more mature. And if you look at the US market, you'd have to say it's fairly mature, if not exhausted to the upside in some ways. So those other markets, I think, have got far more appeal, not only globally, but I think when you really look at it, that may really come into play regarding 2022, 2023, a real boom to be a part of.
Okay, Peter, one last question, and that's on currency. What about the dollar? And if you track the dollar rupee at all now, not now necessarily, but when the taper eventually does happen, whether it's December, whether it's early next year, what have you, and whichever shape or form it comes out.
Well, that US dollar index, we're going to be mindful. It's back at around about that 92.5 handle, so 92.7. And that, as far as the rupee is concerned, it's been very range bound over the last year. So there could be pressure to the US dollar over the next matter of months, a little bit in anticipation as far as downward slide. But if they do, and if everything goes to plan and they start raising rates in 22, then naturally you would think that would underpin dollar, and it might have an impact, of course, on your cross rates. So it's very much a wait and see. There are just, again, still those big frames that need to work through as far as the COVID numbers and the Delta variant and what impact it's having both domestically in the United States and, of course, globally. So we're not out of the woods yet. We're far from it, and that's probably a derailing mechanism that could, stall things a little bit.
Okay, Peter, great having you. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon and evening out there in Australia.
Thank you, Niraj. All the very best.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure having you. That's Peter Maguire with his analysis of taper and the impact that it could have, possibly a non-event of sorts, and some views out there on the non-farm payrolls, which are pretty significant, and of course the currency, which has got a great handle on. So just this small conversation. By the way, Ida talks to Suyash Chaudhary at 9 a.m. today, and you might want to tune in for that, because that gives a great idea of the macro and the fixed income impact of this taper, if any. So in case you feel like logging in at 9 a.m., you will hear Ida in conversation with Suyash. Now, to our markets, just before I get to the trade setup, keep in mind the SGX Nifty is indicating a start in the green. The rest of Asia is doing okay, so no complaints out there. So what's the trade setup like? I think like the conversation that we had, or probably you've analyzed it by now already over the weekend. Nothing untoward by the Fed helps the positive momentum of last week, which is great. Oil has continued its uptick, and there's a small advantage for upstream companies as a result of that. And auto ancillaries and sugar will likely participate in trade this week. That's what I hear from local dealers. What about stocks that you should focus on? Let's quickly get to that, because we're already about 7 minutes into the trade setup. So Bharti Airtel obviously remains firmly in focus. The board has approved the issuance of equity shares on rights basis for an issue size of up to 21,000 crores. The promoter and the promoter group will collectively subscribe to the full extent of the aggregate rights issue. Now, this is important. This is at par with what everybody does, but this is important that the promoter group is also saying that they will subscribe to any unsubscribed shares in the issue. Viewers, why I think this is important is because last time around, same time last year, or slightly maybe a month or two earlier last year, Bharti Airtel promoters sold off some shares, right, in order to raise funds for something. And that was signaled by the market as the top. Now, if this issue would have come out, and if promoters would not have been, or any kind of fundraising where promoters would have diluted equity, that would have been considered a net negative. That is not the case this time around, and that's why I think is a positive. I know I'm a minority. Most people say, oh, this is not a big thing. I think it is a big thing. And let's wait and watch how this shapes up for Airtel. A lot of reports have said this is a net neutral event. There are some reports who are saying this is a positive event. You can pick and choose. The other small positive for Airtel, if you will, could well be this TOI report. Now, again, you have to pick and choose. Don't just look at the headline. The headline numbers are what I'm telling you they are. So it says that Google or Alphabet could essentially invest in Airtel. This is the Times of India note, which says that Google could make substantial investments running into several thousand crores in Airtel. And the second line is important, right? They're saying that Google is in advanced stages of negotiations with Airtel for almost a year. So viewers, that's the point. That the headline is that Google could invest into Airtel, which is great. The story says that they've been in talks for the last 1 year. Now, therefore, does it mean because TOI is reporting, this is a New Delhi report, that Google is very close to making the investment? Or is that they've been talking for a year? They could well talk for another 6 months, who knows? I'm inclined to believe that with TOI reporting this, it could well be very close to the event actually happening. But let's wait and watch. It's just a report. It is not a confirmed piece of news. Now, the miss that I have is that I didn't read in that story, or actually I haven't read, maybe it is there, that whether they've got the company's comment or not, whether the company is denied or just said that we don't comment. Maybe you log on to the Times of India or Google TOI plus Airtel, and you'll get this story. You might want to read this a bit, but this, if this happens, could be really big for Airtel. So let's wait and watch. Remember, they're missing that big global partner. Let's see if this happens. There are, as I said, multiple notes. CLSA has a buy call. Some others have a sell call, or rather not a sell call, but a buy call with a very modest target. CLSA's target is 780. Let's wait and watch. Some other stocks in focus. IGL is important. They have hiked prices of PNG by 1.25 per SCM. You're seeing consistent price hikes by gas companies. And remember, the gas price revision, when it happens in October, at least that's the belief that it will happen from the upstream companies, it will impact a company like IGL and MGL more so than Gujarat Gas. So keep that at the back of your mind. Vedanta, they're going to consider the first interim dividend for FY22 on the 1st of September. I think bulls are hoping for a massive uptick. Could it be about 18 rupees if Hindustan Zinc doesn't alter its dividend policies? It could be. So 18 rupees dividend from Vedanta would be pretty special. So let's wait. And of course, then Vedanta needs to pass it and all of that. So let's wait and watch. Ramakrishna Forgings approved raising up to 500 crores by issuance of securities, any securities, equity shares or otherwise. So this is an important stock. All auto companies, all auto ancillaries of late have been in a good tailwind. As I said, I hear local dealers talk about how they could be buying in auto ancillaries and sugar stocks. And Clean Science, the company's entered the hindered amine light stabilizers series. It's a pocket in specialty chemicals or chemicals which is untouched. No other companies operating in this, and therefore, whatever the market size is, it's all open for Clean Science, at least from an Indian company's perspective. So let's wait and watch. A couple of acquisition news. Burger King, they'll buy up to 85% in Burger King Indonesia. The important thing from my perspective was that they just come out of an IPO, and they're saying that they will fund the deal by maybe exploring the option of raising capital by issuing fresh equity shares. That is interesting. Burger King after the IPO. So they have obviously thought through this, and it could be a big market, but for the dilution, let's see how the market takes to it. Nazara is the other one, wherein they have done an interesting acquisition. They've acquired 100% stake in Hyderabad-based skill gaming company OpenPlay Technologies. It's about 186 crores, the acquisition size, done in tranches as I read. But OpenPlay will aid in building a network of skill gaming destinations on one common tech platform. That's the company release. And apparently the deal will strengthen the company's position in the fast-growing real money gaming segment, the RNG segment that they talk about in gaming. So Nazara gets that expertise or strengthens that piece for themselves. Daulat Capital or Dart Research came out of this note post-acquisition. They are saying that their DCF-based target is 2,400. They believe this is a profitable business, and it's not a EPS dilutive thing. In fact, it's a net neutral thing because it is a profitable business. And the PE ratios and the price to growth ratios of the stock compel them to believe that Nazara could be an interesting one. Actually, why I thought of Zomato was because the next report is on Zomato. Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley have come out with the notes on Zomato. I'm bringing you the Goldman Sachs note. They are saying that they initiated a buy with the target price of 180. They believe there's a growing share in the 150 billion plus total addressable market, and Zomato is well positioned to grow its share from 9% in FY30 from the current 4%, and they forecast the revenue growth for Zomato to be about 13 times from FY21 levels by FY30. But they of course believe Zomato will become a bit profitable in FY24, and therefore it could be an interesting stock to look at. Multiple views. Morgan Stanley's price target is just about 140. So keep that at the back of your mind. Not everybody is as bullish as maybe a Goldman Sachs or a UBS is on Zomato. Net, watch out for sugar, watch out for auto ancillaries, actually even real estate. I think Lawrence Balanco has said, go short IT or rather move out of IT into real estate, because real estate has been a laggard and IT companies have had to raise employee salaries, and maybe those employee salaries will go into real estate names. So maybe look at Southern Indian names. That's what I think the Jeffries note says. So everybody's turning bullish on real estate. But what I said was local dealer desks, sugar, and auto ancillaries. Do watch out for Bharti Airtel in particular today, because not just because of the fundraise, but also because of the TOI news. So those are a few stocks that you would want to keep an eye out for. We'll start off well. Let's see if we keep up the momentum. Thanks so much for tuning in today, viewers, and to all of you, Jai Shri Krishna, Happy Janmashtami.